Morning.
Yanarengesa kitikondane Beni ni miti maza tuzene zinasanga Tele soyeka ayalengela titutemwane Beni ni miti maza tuzene zinasanga
Exclusive to ZambianMusicBlog.co.
Outsurance offers comprehensive life cover that even includes a free funeral and final expense benefit. Click here to start a quote and take control of your life story. Outsurance. You always get something out.
I remember it like it was yesterday, but it wasn't. It was 18 months ago. Worst 9 months of my life. Nothing to do. No broadband, no wine.
20 minutes after tech challenges. When technology meets human beings, things don't work out the way you want them to. Anyway, welcome back. Yeah, no, we welcome ourselves back. Yeah, y'all good?
Excellent.
What's happening?
Friday vibes.
Okay, nice. Right. We also have Mr. M on the other side. Good morning, Mr. M.
Morning.
Hello. Good morning.
Morning.
Can you hear him?
I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Now, finally. Yes. Okay. Nice. Right. As we continue with the Future I Want on the Continental Sunrise Breakfast Show. Right. Before that what do you call it? That favorite gem of mine. I was saying putting heads together or coming together as a collective to work towards a common goal. Is it desirable? And here we look at the European Union. Somebody would say, "Hey, what country is that?"
What country is
that? Yeah, but we see a group of countries coming together, right? Is it for a common goal? Is it for a better understanding? Is it for better business opportunities? That if they come together, they can reach out to more and do better. Yeah, no.
Yeah. They have found similarities and benefits of coming together, but they haven't really come together. I think the benefit is more for the business sector than cultural exchanges and the average person. I just think it's like a big company powwow.
Okay. That's what you think, right?
Sounds good.
Okay. Yes. Okay. The role of EU business actors in building an inclusive SA, right? That is the sub-subject that we've got as well. And we'll be speaking to Stefan, right, who's the executive director of European Union Chamber of Commerce. That's between 8:10 and 8:30.
Yes.
Pretty excited. Yeah. So if you want to be part of that conversation, we're on Facebook. The handle is at the 1873 FM, on Twitter at the 1873 FM. You can also drop us those WhatsApp texts. The number is +276 700 1873. Right. That is the number you can reach us on. If you want to reach us out via SMS, you can SMS your text to 37873. Right. Your message, then your name at the end. SMS is charged at R1.50 per SMS. Free SMSs and bundle SMSs do not apply. Right. So you gotta use your money for what's right.
True.
Right. TV side.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead.
Right. So I was about to say, we'll be speaking to a representative or the executive director of EU Chamber of Commerce, right? But before we even get to that, why is it really necessary for countries to actually form a community that serves its purpose, or individual countries, or ideally it will be ideally for each country to go on their own? Why come together?
I think I thought you were talking about the Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Yes, that's the one I'm talking about, yeah.
Yeah, so why a chamber? What is a chamber? And in the group, why would people come together and create a chamber? How is a chamber defined? Because there are many people who don't even know what a chamber is. Yet you have a subject matter about the chamber. And if it's a chamber of commerce, what does it mean? And ordinarily, the word chamber, where did it come from?
Mm-hmm.
And how did it become known? So if you go to Wikipedia, it says a chamber of commerce, the business network with local, regional, national, international, and bilateral chambers.
Mm-hmm.
You also have a chamber of parliament. You also have the office of a judge that becomes a chamber. And a chamber is just a room used for a special or official purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Group of people who form that the English dictionary, who form part of a parliament.
Mm-hmm.
Could be a torture chamber, and you may go into a judge's office where you discuss common interest. So if you're there to promote and protect, so obviously two things that you put forward. You want to protect, you want to promote. So if it's radio, you want to promote 1873 and you want to protect it. And the people who then come together, they are now called a network. And why is a network important? And how can it be a win-win situation?
Mm-hmm.
There are countries in Europe that have representatives in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
The EU is an association of countries, and they found it fit to set up a group of countries and who then have business interests. Let's say Europe, it has business actors. If you were to reduce Europe into business and non-business actors,
Mm-hmm.
you may get 10 million organizations that are European. And those organizations are divided into the countries where they are headquartered or operate from. Like Nestle is in Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
Siemens, it's in Germany. But they all belong to a club called the European Union.
Right.
When they come together, they have a bigger voice. As individual countries, they don't have that voice. If you look at the United States, it's one union, but it's multiple states. South Africa used to be also a union.
Mm-hmm.
It had what you called Bantustans. It was also a republic. But the effect of 94 was to bring all these people together into one republic. And now you can cross the borders without any documentation. So the EU chamber is not the German chamber, it's not the Swiss
Mm-hmm.
chamber, it's not the French chamber. The French have their own chambers that are promoting French business interests. And then there are times when they have to come together
Mm-hmm.
as Europeans or people coming from the European region. And that's where the chamber would be. So it would be interesting to know, how does the European chamber relate to the individual country chambers?
Right. Very interesting. Right. Those who are on Twitter, you can hashtag 1873. That's words, then 73 number digits, right? That's the hashtag. Hashtag 1873, as in EIGHTEEN, right? 1873 and 73. All right. Because if you say 1873, it doesn't go. Don't hashtag like that. All right. That's a correction for those who are hashtagging. It's letters, then the digit 73. All right. 7:31. Yours and our time. Right. We go for a breather. Come back. We continue with our conversation.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Counting down the songs you love most. I love this song. I'm gonna play it.
I need the right selection. Are you guys ready?
Turn it up.
1873 FM.
Roger. Frequency modulation engaged. Regional worldwide music stream in 3, 2, 1.
Hello.
Здравствуй.
Shalom. Bonjour.
สวัสดีこんにちは
What's up, world?
Good songs.
Day long. Number 1.
Most awesome thing ever.
This is
One of the coolest stations in the world.
Get more online. Keep updated with our Facebook page.
What is life? What is time? What's a burden when I know the dream is mine? A journey, a feeling, turn my weakness into strength. I need a sign. Time has no end. Time has no eyes. But if you listen, you will see. We all need a dream to breathe. If you listen, you will see. We all need a dream to breathe. In the weather. Like the birds need air to soar, like the soil needs rain to pour, pulling my way. What is life? What is time? How it's spent is a choice, inevitable is the climb. For another black slide, reaching for the sky. When it's over, our medals are our stars.
Pulling my wagon, you got your wagon too. Pulling my weight just to do what I have to do. Time has no eyes and no ears too. If you on my wagon, you are a burden too. I am the engineer. I have to build the bridge. Nobody is to blame if I don't reach it. Madiba and Butch Lewis taught us these lessons. Being able to pull your own wagon, that's a blessing.
Time has no end. Time has no eyes. But if you listen, you will see. We all need a dream to breathe. If you listen, you will see. We all need a dream to breathe.
Pulling my wagon. You pull your wagon too. Pulling my wagon. You pull your wagon too.
Like the birds lead to soar. Like the sun leads rain to pour. Pulling my wagon.
You pull your wagon too.
The Friday Morning Rush with Wildfire DJ.
Download our app on the Google Play Store and iOS. 1873 FM.
Right, sounds of SKE and Sakile, they're pulling my wagon. Right. Did you know that the EU has historically been South Africa's main trading partner and the biggest source of foreign direct investment? Okay, sorry, your mics are off.
Yes, we know.
True, yes.
Yeah, I forgot to switch you on. So, yeah. Turn you on, forgot.
Switch is the right word.
But what's the difference between turn and switch?
They're not even in the same category.
Oh, okay. All right. Let me turn your mic on.
Yes. Excuse me while I flash.
English, right?
Hey, the queen. I know she did a number on us.
Yeah. All right. So, anyone who has an idea how long the European Union Chamber of Commerce has been in South Africa?
Since colonization.
What do you mean? What's colonization now? Now you bring in
No, please.
alien
no,
words.
No, guys, that's just spice and shade. Let's not go down that word. Please, let's not go down that route.
Because I was about to say, okay, now there's a new term. Right. So I mean, it's many times we don't really understand some of these things, right?
Yes.
You can only know if you do research, and you can only know if you invest in finding out and asking questions.
Exactly.
All right. Yeah. And any of your friends asking questions regarding what we're talking about? What,
No.
are they in the dark?
I think people are rushing to work. Today's just a misfit for a lot of
Can I be honest?
constituency.
My pool of people and my pool of friends do not have economic discussions on a global scale. They're very much still focused on fixing their immediate needs and circumstances and surroundings. So like building community, and those who are entrepreneurs are building networks. Do you know what I mean? Like just trying to sustain themselves. Whereas the macro economy goes not necessarily undiscovered, but unexplored. You know, we're not having big conversations, fundamental conversations on the macroeconomy and how we fit into the space of the world. So would they be listening? I don't think so. You know, not when Brian Mulife is trending in the country. You know what I mean? So
all right.
That's to answer your question.
But it isn't. But like, okay, essentially, but it is beneficial to be having these sort of conversations because you could find your space.
Yes.
Like, I mean, there's so many different diverse opportunities in the space of macro and microeconomics. And you know, there's always, you know, room for change. And if you can be the change that you want to see, why not find your footing? In exploring it first in discussion, then research, like Wildfire just said. Well, in my group of friends, we do have these conversations, but waking up this early in the morning. Yeah, it's very difficult for everyone to get up and get to work on time. But essentially, if we could maximize and create like platforms where they could, find a way to do this while they multitask and be on the way to work, I think it might help. Hey, get them to download apps, the app of the station and whatnot. Yeah, if we could convince them to do that. But yeah, in my pool of friends, we do talk about macro and microeconomics, mostly because it's in the framework of the kind of research that we do in development sciences. We talk, basically my interest in macro and microeconomics is trying to find the loopholes. Where is it not working? And where have we seen a history or a pattern of success in other countries, and trying to find what might work and create sort of little testing grounds that might even start in something as small as a university and test it out there and see if it works. Take it, put it in an incubator sort of testing ground, and put some funding into it, call APSA into it, call different brands, and see if it works in the form of research. That's what basically school is about. And then essentially, once you've done it in a testing ground and it works, it gets applied by government, it gets applied by companies, and it becomes a working model. We've got the Johannesburg Cities board as well, which basically talks about that as well in urban planning, where they talk about macroeconomics, microeconomics, and they allow us thinking bodies, students who ponder about these issues of macro and microeconomics, and then we get to bring our ideas together and see if they work or not. And if they do work, they get tested in real life, and we see it being applied, or tested rather, in the form of policies that the public get to agree on or disagree on.
Okay. Pretty cool. I want some of that.
No, but then if people don't like it.
But Wildfire,
yes,
can you understand? People talk about macro, micro, and they're talking about economics without understanding what is macro, what is micro. Because what is the organization like the EU got to do, the Chamber of Commerce and Industry got to do with macro? The companies that employ people belong to certain countries, including South Africa.
Yeah.
True.
And the employers directly who are impacted by policy. So if you say BEE, there is a position of different companies. You may find companies themselves, they have operations globally, but they call one place their headquarters. But it doesn't mean all the decisions are made at the headquarters. They are made at the local level, because you have to provide goods and services to the market that you. But how many people think there are European companies in South Africa? And they think, and forgetting that all companies that operate in South Africa are registered in South Africa. And how many people did research before coming to the studio about what a chamber is, why commerce, why industry? Because you find even Brian Molefe is just an actor, and the people who challenged the decision in relation to his termination are actually organized groups. If you look at the applicants in Brian Molefe's case, who do you think it is? Sia, do you know who the macro applicants are?
Oh my. In what context?
in Brian Molife's case, there was a judgment yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And Tessa says it's trending. So if it's trending, maybe Tessa can tell you who disputed the arrangement with Brian Molife and went to court.
Wasn't that the Tuli Madonsela?
No, she was the cause for him to resign.
Mm-hmm.
So
the report.
So it started way back when she was doing a report, the inquiry and state capture, and then he ended up resigning because of that report. And who actually challenged his? I'm trying to remember.
But it's imagine wildfire is trending, but we don't pay attention to details.
No, we don't.
You see?
No, we don't.
So, which station can I go to where we can pay attention to details? That actually the applicant was an association.
Is it the trade union Solidarity?
Yeah. And some people say, what are the benefits of a union? Imagine it took a group of people who are saying the money you are getting comes from us. That money ought to come to us as workers. We have an interest in the pension payout. As employees. And COSATU did not take action. If you look at other associations, but Solidarity in terms of identity in South Africa, is it a white union or a black union in the minds of the people?
It's a white union.
Huh?
In the minds of the people, it is a white union.
Yeah. So is this racism in court? If it was a white person who had received a pension payout, do you think there will be a problem with Solidarity?
I'd like to hope so.
Why do you have to hope so? When you are in the media and you can pick up a phone.
That's
and
true.
say
I'd like to hope so.
No, there's no need to hope in the land of the living. You want to establish whether if it was a white person,
do the same rules apply?
Do the same rules apply? And you can get Solidarity's number, and even the team that is quiet, the wildfire, we agreed people are going to participate.
Yes.
But you see Gamane and Tinashe, and the rest are just watching.
They're in the shadows.
They will never go and check who is Solidarity. And Gamane has already quoted Solidarity's Deg Hammond, says they will pursue criminal charges against Brian Molife. This comes after the High Court in Victoria ordered Molife to pay the pension payout he received from the power utility within 10 days.
So it is important to do proper research, and
the devil is in the detail.
Exactly. If you want to find the devil, look for the details. Needle in the haystack. That kind of stuff. Right. Those tuning in, we are on the Continental Sunrise Breakfast Show. 10 minutes up before the hour of 8, right? Tessa, Sia, MDM on TV, me this side, and those who are tweeting, the handle is at the 1873 FM, right? That's on Twitter. WhatsApp, it's a +276 700 1873. SMS is R1.50 37873. SMS bundles and free SMSs do not apply, right? So no free ride.
Get more online. Keep updated with our Facebook page. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
You know everybody wanna be famous, wanna be. It feels good.
Add us to your network. Get more online. Keep updated with our Facebook page.
Every time I need you.
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Add us to your network.
Ecosystem. There is more that unites us and not divides us. Oh yeah. Democracy alone cannot deliver the true purpose of life. Oh, yeah, yeah.
See me talking to the man in the mirror.
See me talking to the man.
Gotta be the change you want to see.
Gotta be the change you wanna see.
See me talking to the man in the mirror.
See me talking to the man.
Gotta be the change you want to see.
I gotta be the change you want to see.
We can change the world.
We can change the world.
We can change the world.
We can change it. All right.
We can change the world.
All right, all right. We can change the space.
We can change the world.
We can change the world.
We can change the world.
Make it a better place.
We can change the world.
We can change it. Make it a better place for us.
With you and me. We see people procrastinating. We see people deferring to others to be the change. Yet we all know that any motion requires causation. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh. Without human action, history will always be a straight line. It's me and you who write history by bending it with action. Whoa, 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 yeah. To the man in the mirror. Gotta be the change you want to see. You gotta be the change you want to see. Yeah. Alright. Gotta be the change you want to see. Be the change you want to see. We can change the world. We can change the world. We can change the world. I know that. Oh, it starts with you and me. We can change the world.
the business of the group, but the individual whose thoughts and actions deliver the difference. Inspired by Mandela's spirit to be the change, let us be his engineers, drivers, character and personality. Start by doing the little things that gives character and personality. Because history never lies, it tells your story. History is shaped and defined by individual actions. Mandela is not remembered for threats, but his courage and determination and actions too. Gandhi said, be the change, and we as the 1873 network say that change begins with me and you.
See me talking to the man in the mirror.
Let me make it clear. We play his music here. Let me make it clear.
We play his music here.
We play his music. We play his music. We play his music. You control the sound of your station. Music. Don't stop.
Sun is shining and so are you.
The most commercial-free hit music all summer.
Okay, let's see. All right, Mr. M, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect. Right. I was worried about that four-way conversation because I need to make sure. Right. Yes, we continue our conversation on the 1873 FM. Right. I see there's some people who are having conversations on WhatsApp. Let's take those conversations to Facebook, public platform. All right. Because WhatsApp is like a room. It's not a chamber. Can we take it out to the public square? At least there you can broaden the conversation. All right. Let's not keep it on WhatsApp only because it's between me and you. The rest of the world won't see it. So we need to spread the word out there. All right.
True.
Then that's how it works. And don't forget when you tweet, you need to hashtag, right? Hashtag 1873. Right. Okay. And somebody expects me to reply to them on WhatsApp because I'm online. Like seriously. All right. So, Mr. M, I mean, we on that verge where we are saying, look, let us learn to communicate, right? And while we communicate, how best do we communicate?
It's thinking. If people think, you may find even in a subject matter that is boring, to others, you can ignite interest. And by sharing, imagine you are in the studio and you are 3 of you, and you are also sharing on Facebook. You may discover that actually it ignites other people to think. You are part of the conversation. Because some will just scroll over the comments.
Right.
Some will never have the time of watching the video. Be denied of your input. Look, like Darlington Steve says, I celebrate and Wexer, looking forward to meeting with you. You are the change voice we need, and you are channeling that cause. Darlington again says we can do that as a media, but we have powers that be, and also we as blacks haven't formed enough confidence to address the issues. The issue of support. We are black, want to be fighters and never want to engage. Is it a black thing? From your observation, Wildfire, is it a black?
No, humans in general don't normally engage if things don't affect them. So it's not a black or white thing. It's just human in general.
But you are 3 blacks in the studio. So your failure to communicate, is it because of white privilege?
No, it's got nothing to do with that, eh?
Your failure to network and to express what is important to you, is it because of white conspiracy?
Is that a conspiracy now? That I can't think because there's a white person. Nah, that doesn't work.
So you have seen that the EU have issued press statements. They have stated on various issues of national interest, the chamber. How many of us actually went to research that? If you were to ask honestly, who researched what the take of the EU chamber is on BEE, on state capture, on white monopoly, on imperialism, on colonialism,
Yeah, you're saying?
I would have to do more research on that.
You have to do what?
More research on that. Yeah, it's the opinions of the European Union. No, not known to me. No.
And what is their position on renewable energy? On labor-intensive industries?
Yeah.
So we can't afford to be in this century and then we approach life empty-handed. So it then informs your questions. If you are to meet someone from the EU and you have not done your research, then it's a PR exercise. Gamani is just, could you share the EU report, please? We have already ignited Simbarashe to want to know more about the EU report. But which report does Simbarashe want? Perhaps Simbarashe can tell us what report. The codes of good governance.
Is he not referring to your comment where you said what is EU's stance on renewable energy on the BEE issue?
They are all on the website of the EU.
Mm-hmm.
You can post the EU website.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not a magician.
Mm-hmm.
All this information is readily available.
Yeah.
It is old. A business survey of 2016. Oh, okay. I don't have a copy of them. They refer to it. Thanks, Baraji. They refer to it, but then we can ask the representative of the chamber that Simbarashe wants a copy of the survey, and he can direct us where it is, and then be able to respond.
Your password followed by the pound key. Thank you.
Right, 7 minutes after 8. Right, in a few minutes, we'll be speaking to the representative from the European Union. Right, so that we find out more details. Right, if you've got questions, we'll be speaking to Executive Chairman of the EU Chamber. That's Stephanie Sakochek. Right, hopefully I pronounced that word right, but I'll get him to give us a correct pronunciation of his name, right? But yes, so we'll be speaking to Stefan shortly, who is the Executive Chairman of the EU. Right, stay online. It's the 1873 FM, and you can visit us through our website, which is www.the1873fm.com. We're also streaming live via the 1873 TV website. That's at www.the1873tv.com. Right, you can catch us there. Also download the 1873 app on Play Store, App Store, as well as BlackBerry World.
Download our app on the Google Play Store and iOS. 1873 FM. To advertise with us, call our sales and marketing department on 011-5684-272. Terms and conditions apply.
Right, and Winnie is back. Right, I think we've got Stephanie on the line. Stephanie, good morning.
Morning, Stanley. How are you?
I'm very well, and yourself? Welcome to the 1873 FM.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Right, Stephanie, before even go further, Stephanie, is it Sakochek?
Sakochek, yes.
Sakochek. Well, okay. I'm close, eh?
Yeah.
All right. All right. You are the executive chairman. What does that entail when you say I'm an executive chairman?
Oh, that's the guy who does all the work and gets most of the glory, but none of the money, in essence.
Oh, okay. All right. We
if
also.
I wanted...
Yes.
Yeah.
No, you can go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to draw the distinction quickly between the EU delegation that we have in Pretoria and the EU Chamber of Commerce. So we have an embassy in Pretoria, the European Union Embassy, which is a public sector entity. So it's much like a federation of all embassies. We have a European Union ambassador, and those people are representatives and public servants, in fact, appointed by the European Commission in Brussels. So we have a huge commission in Brussels. On the other hand, the EU Chamber of Commerce and Industry is a private sector initiative. So it's a federation of companies that got together and formed the EU Chamber. And I've been one of the founding members. I'm one of the directors. As a matter of fact, I'm an executive director and chairman of the board. whereas the European Union, the European Embassy, I should say, in Pretoria, is there to discuss everything pertaining to diplomatic relations with South Africa, bilateral trade agreements, and those sorts of things.
Oh, okay. And when was the European Union Chamber formed?
The chamber was formed in 2015 as a result, in fact, of getting together with all the bilateral chambers of commerce. So in South Africa, you've got the presence of about 12 or 13 of the big Western European countries in the shape of a chamber of commerce. So you've got the German Chamber of Commerce, the French one, the British one, and so we go. But there was, until 2015, there was no, call it syndication, there was no federation of all chambers getting together and representing one chamber as the European Union Chamber. So we established it in 2015.
Okay, right. We also have Mr. Mutumwa joining us on the TV side. Mr. M.
Morning, Stefan.
Again. Yes, morning. How are you?
How are you doing? What heritage are you? Are you English or French or Spanish?
Oh, myself, I'm a binational. I'm a French-Austrian national, but I've been in South Africa for close to 24 years, so I suppose that makes me a South African as well.
So you're one of us.
Yes, absolutely.
So we don't want you to be European from now onwards. We want you to be African. I'm joking.
It's as good as done.
Yeah. What is your take on the resolutions that were passed by the African National Congress in December relating to economic matters?
Relating to what? Sorry, Mr. Mam?
Economic matters.
Look, I'm going to give you a very broad overview because as the Chamber of Commerce, we're really here to protect, promote, advocate, and defend interests of business per se. So we try, generally speaking, to stay at arm's length from the political landscape in South Africa. As that said, it of course affects the way we look at foreign direct investment. It affects the way we operate as businesses in SA. And as the Chamber, we are very concerned about all the regulatory items in the policy framework of South Africa. So we look at things that are transverse to the political regimes in place. Our main concern is, and in fact you can find most of that information on bmg.org.co.za, I think, is the 40 odd bills that are in the shape of either a white paper or a green paper and haven't been signed. So we have a long list of items that we're concerned about, starting with land reform, quite obviously, but also the security bill or sugar tax or liquor taxes, or any number of items which are in the pipeline and ready to be signed off in terms of regulations that haven't been signed off yet. So I would say the new landscape that came about as the elections of December in the ANC is just basically shedding a new light on what is going to happen. We're sort of on a standby position at the moment and waiting to see which of those bills are going to be signed off at some point by the presidency, whether it's now or in 2019, subsequent to which they'll go to NCOP, subsequent to which they'll be gazetted and eventually validated by the presidency. But for now, we have a great degree of uncertainty in light of the new landscape. Our concerns are the validation of the land reform, for example, as an immediate decision by President of the ANC, Mr. Ramaphosa. We're concerned about the latest events that took place, events that took place between the EFF and H&M. So there's a whole new landscape, put it this way. There's a whole new setup and a whole new landscape and a whole new team coming about. So we're sort of in a wait-and-see position at the moment to decide whether or not South Africa remains a good destination for investment or not.
Okay, if you look at the country, South Africa, that is your home now. Do you think it's a divided society? If so, what is the role of business in bridging the divide, if there is any?
I think with the commitment, if I can give you a few numbers, the commitment of Europe in South Africa has been very strong for the last 24 years. In fact, since 1994, Europe in South Africa represents today 80% of South Africa's total foreign direct investment. We realized that when we formed, in fact, the EU Chamber, we realized that we are 2,000 European businesses present in SA. We employ close to 500,000 people. So we're by far the largest foreign direct investor compared to, let's say, the US or China, for example. That's on the one side. So we've shown a strong engagement. On the second side, other than foreign direct investment, we also are the largest trading partner of South Africa. If you take the 28 member states of the European Union, you'll see that we've traded some 560 billion rand worth of bilateral trade per annum, as compared to, for example, China, who currently is trading for 2016, was trading about 250 billion rand. So two main demonstrations of commitment and engagement of European businesses in SA. A big portion of that, of course, comes from the manufacturing sector and our automakers, not to name the big German automakers one by one, but quite a few of those, so that represents a big chunk. I think the commitment to the economic transformation in South Africa has also been very, very strong throughout the years and remains so. So what we're facing now, practically speaking, and going forward, is we're facing a change of both economic landscape and political landscape. I'm sure you're familiar with the fact that the BBBE scorecard has changed. The 5 pillars of the scorecard have evolved. So we're sitting today in a situation where instead of having to engage with a 25.1% local shareholding to get a level 1 rating, we're sitting now with a 51% to obtain your 25 points in that pillar of the scorecard. So the landscape has changed, and we're trying to find solutions to carry on committing to our investment and to the divide and to enforce radical economic transformation. But we're trying to find economic solutions. And I'll give you an example. Some of the things we're trying to do is to reach an equity equivalence type of system where some of our listed companies cannot afford, by reasons of governance, by reasons of their own listing requirements, cannot commit to ceding shareholding to a local partner. However, we're trying to find alternatives with maybe the Department of Transport, maybe DOT, maybe the Health Department. We're trying to find a system where we can carry on investing and we can carry on employing and developing our own activities and pushing for economic transformation, creating employment, but it still has to make business sense. You see, we remind the listeners that we're a private sector organization driven by bottom line results and effect, and we have to report most of the time to our shareholders and directors who are sitting in maybe London or Berlin or Paris or Stuttgart or elsewhere. So they are looking at it from a bird's eye view, and they want returns on investment. So the whole idea now, to answer your question in a roundabout way, is to carry on doing business because we're convinced that South Africa remains a good investment destination, has enormous production capacity. It's just a matter now of making sure that we can combine both economic transformation for the country and still make a return on investment. And that's the balancing act that we're busy with literally on a daily basis.
How best do you think economic freedom can be best won? Through the market system or through government?
I'm a big, as a private sector guy myself, I'm a big proponent of a free market economy. With some degree of, you're going to say it's a way of being diplomatic about my comments, but I'm very much for a market-driven economy as opposed to a government-driven economy. with a minimum involvement of government, but I think government should maintain its role forever as the overseer of infrastructures in the country and not get involved in actual business on the top end or on the bottom end. So my idea to my response to you is, if we look at the macroeconomics in South Africa at the moment, we've had a weakening rand, so that's increased our exports a little bit and weakened as a result of the weakening of our currency. But if you look at the macroeconomics, South Africa is sitting pretty much in a trade deficit situation. Endemically, it's also sitting with a budget deficit, which I think is forecasted at 5% instead of 4%. We have a devaluating currency, and we have a high unemployment rate. I think we've actually beaten Venezuela to it. So the macroeconomics are such that they almost dictate that a market-driven solution be found. And there I'm thinking along the lines of low-tech manufacturing for purposes of export. So if we can find a way to actually operationalize what was written in the NDP or written in the IPAP, which is, it's all very well and fine, but if we can implement and operationalize what was said, i.e. incentivize manufacturing to generate exports and to bring in forex into the country, nothing's going to happen. So until such time as we have clear directives from the government, regardless of what they are, again, we're a private sector initiative, any nation or any government is sovereign, so that's like any other in terms of the policy framework. But if the policy framework is not conducive for us to invest in a manufacturing tool, which in turn allows for exports, which in turn allows for forex to come into the country, then we're going to perpetuate a situation which is currently unhealthy from a macroeconomic point of view. So to answer your question, we need a strong incentive on investments, on manufacturing. We need a competitive environment in South Africa as compared to South Africa's own competitors. South Africa is not alone as a manufacturing destination. You look at neighboring countries, or you look at even further north in Africa, Kenya and Nigeria, for example, are attractive destinations for reasons of good infrastructure, relatively low cost of labor, and good, I'd say, good geographical locations for export and import. So South Africa's got competition in the region. They've also got competition in Southeast Asia for manufacturing. For example, you can go to manufacture there for lesser cost of production. And South Africa's got its inherent selling propositions, but it's also got its own downsides. So we've got energy issues, we've got water issues. Look at what's happening in Cape Town, for example, even though that's not a governmental matter, but we have a set of parameters in South Africa which make it so that it becomes either an interesting investment destination for manufacturing, which concurrently will lower unemployment, bring in forex, and bring South Africa out of the doldrums, or not. So the only thing I think the government should focus on, generally speaking, not only in South Africa, is to create an environment where it is conducive for any manufacturer, whether it's European or US or Chinese for that matter, to come into SA, to create a firm employment base and to enrich the country, and that in turn will promote economic transformation and radical transformation. And what that is going to create is a favorable framework not only for the famed foreign investors, but for the local entrepreneur. I think the second main thing, other than low-tech manufacturing, the second big chapter, or the second big item which drives an economy worldwide, is the small and medium enterprise. So it's not a matter of securing shares in a business and hoping that it could generate some dividends. It's a matter of being able to create a business in South Africa as a South African national to feed into the global supply chain, into ours as European manufacturers or exporters, but to use what we have as a network as European global traders, global multinationals, to use that as a platform to manufacture here in South Africa, to become an entrepreneur, produce a service, manufacture a product, which then feeds into our supply chain, which can then be exported. Again, same result. We generate forex, we create entrepreneurs, and we create a solid base for future development.
And I'm just fascinated by a country in the European Union called Austria.
Yes.
Austria covers an area of 83,878 kilometers with a population of 8.8 million residents as of January 2017, and including 15.3% foreigners. Austria is bigger than South African economy, and yet is a home of only 8.8 million people. Do you think we are not doing enough to educate ourselves about the real fundamentals of what creates a growing, inclusive, and prosperous nation?
Austria is one of the, if you pick Austria, it's my nation country, of course. I'm well versed with Austria and its economy and its exports. You have to keep in mind that Austria, a little bit like Germany perhaps, is one of the role models even in Western Europe. And what they have managed to secure is to capitalize on their environment. So they're in the middle of a range of mountains, so they're surrounded in fact by mountains. They're also right next to Germany. And they've historically, for geographical reasons, in fact, they've had probably less immigration than other countries within Europe. So they are sort of almost landlocked, yet they are an economy which is right next to the German economy, which is the locomotive of Europe when it comes to development and exports and trade surpluses and those sorts of things. So they've managed to combine very specifically all their tools, all their assets, call it, all their advantages together to create a positive engineering-driven, tourism-driven economies. They generate a lot of forex. Because you have a low population, in fact, the value add of their tourism alone covers that. They have tourism in both in summer and in winter. That's one big source of revenue for Austria. But they also do a lot of subcontracting work or manufacturing work or value add work for their neighbor Germany. So off the top of my head, they assemble 2 or 3 of the vehicles for Mercedes-Benz, let's just name them, and then create an industrial platform as a result of that. Third, they've developed country-specific technologies such as snow. They export a lot of skis and they export a lot of snow cannons and they export a lot of what do you call those teleferics or chairs that carry people up top of the mountains like you have in Lesotho. In fact, there's even Salt's one of those setups in Lesotho. So they've managed over the years to bring to themselves all the assets that they had and to convert that into a positive economy. And I think one of the key things, you rightly put your finger on it, one of the key elements in Austria to have transformed all these assets into a net positive cash flow and into a positive economy is certainly free education, or largely free education. And I don't want to, open a hornet's nest here when it comes to free education. I'm not saying that it's necessarily the solution for South Africa, but a lot has to be said about education and subsidizing education as a country. If you subsidize education to a great extent and you provide high-level education, you will in turn increase your level of competency, increase your skills level, acquire knowledge, which in turn will allow you to further develop and further capitalize on what's already been done to further improve your technology platform. So I almost can't draw a parallel between South Africa and Austria because Austria is very, very specific to its own set of parameters. I think what South Africa has to do is to carry on identifying what makes South Africa, both from a geographical point of view, from a geopolitical point of view, from a available skill set point of view, from a labor availability point of view, and primary resources. We've got minerals, we've got tourism. I've mentioned that. So I think we need to really focus on what we have I say we now, you see, as a South African, what we have as assets and what we can capitalize on to start balancing our books and furthermore generating a positive cash flow. So it's education, identifying our resources, and creating a conducive landscape for the entrepreneur in South Africa to be able to develop his business easily, both from a regulatory framework, but also from an IT point of view, in communications and banking and all those things that go together. So there's still a lot of work. We have all the potential in the world to make that happen, but I don't think it's only an outside economy or outside investors that can make it happen. It has to come from the inside at policy level to begin with.
All right, Stephanie, thank you for that. Stay on the line. Let us quickly pay our bills, and we'll come back here. We continue with the conversation. It's 1873 FM, your voice, your power.
Outsurance offers comprehensive life cover that even includes a free funeral and final expense benefit. Click here to start a quote and take control of your life story. Outsurance, you always get something out.
On this side of the hemisphere.
I think that there are people who are much more knowledgeable than the others.
Okay, all right. Let's go on. Okay. Once you take up a position or an administrative role, automatically individuals will relate to you as a leader, as a boss, blah, 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 etc., etc.
Does the leader exist?
1873 Continental Sunrise on your radio every day from 6 to 9 a.m. 1873 FM. Your voice, your power. Download our app on the Google Play Store and iOS. 1873 FM.
You control the sound of your station.
It's the weekend. We can see it.
Right at 27 minutes before the hour of 9 a.m. It's the Continental Sunrise Breakfast Show. And on the line with the Executive Director of European Union Chamber, Stephanie. All right, Stefan, we've got a couple of questions that are coming in from some of our listeners. We've got Mr. G who says, Wildfire, can you ask Stephanie, is the Chamber against BEE? And if yes, what do you think should be the replacement for BEE?
No, the Chamber, I wouldn't say is against anything. Mm-hmm. The Chamber of Commerce is a group of entrepreneurs, a group of companies, European companies, in fact, established in South Africa, who got together and are trying to act as a liaison point, act as a communication channel, let's say, between all our corporates present in SA and the government. Mm-hmm. So we've engaged and that makes it easier on both ends. I think the initiative gained traction as it was established in 2015. We gained traction immediately with the various government departments at ministry level, at DG level, and across all sectors of industry, because it's a lot easier for the South African government to interact with one entity representing, 12 or 15 bilateral chambers and 2,000 companies than having to deal with each one individually. So what we are, in effect, we are a communication channel between as many of the European businesses as possible and the government. And I want to underscore that we've interacted with the government on probably up to 10 to 15 serious regulatory issues in the policy framework, which affect the way we look at business here, which affect the way we repatriate profits, which affects the way we import substandard or not substandard goods. So we've engaged on issues of sugar taxes, liquor taxes, land reforms, security bills, expropriation bills, and such. And Triple BE came about last year as a topic of engagement with the government. So when we address BEE, we're neither against nor for. We're just waiting to see where the chips will fall, and we've alerted the government on what the concerns were that were raised by our corporates. So we went, I think I mentioned it earlier, we went from if you look at the chronology of Triple BE and its scorecard, we went from a situation where we had a set of parameters from 1994 onwards, I think, where the Triple BE scorecard was set up in a certain way with a certain structure, and you had to get certain points per pillar, and that changed. It changed literally over a matter of a couple of months without much consultation with some of the major stakeholders, and I'd like to think we're part of those. So we're trying to address the fact now and see what the consequences have been on our businesses and what the consequences are and will be on our businesses. And I think it's not a secret. If you've got a corporate who's committed to investments in South Africa to the extent of a few hundred million sometimes or billions, a regulatory change like the change in the scorecard of weighing of the pillars has affected the way our directorships or our shareholders in Europe have looked at South Africa. Is it not a barrier to entry? Does it not make business more difficult? Are we not ceding away too much of our profit share? Should we look at the alternative investment destination? So it brings about a whole host of questions, which we table in the open, in complete transparency. In fact, we've written position papers on the consequences of the new scorecard. They're visible on our website. You can go to euchamber.co.za. So we're not against. We've just tabled the issues and the consequences that it's caused.
Oh, okay. Right. The other question is the World Economic Forum taking place in Davos is running under the theme creating a shared future in a fractured world. How best do you think a future that is inclusive and progressive and prosperous can be attained?
I think the future is a global economy. We've seen the development of circular economies and global economies and communications and information technology. We've followed the development of that, and some of us for longer than others. For those who are the Generation X people, with the 40-plus-year-olds to 40 to 65 or 70 years old, have followed that development over the last 20 years. What I've observed, this is from my little facet of observation, is that we're going more and more towards an all-inclusive economy, which is accelerating, and particularly on both ends of the spectrum. So there's a lot of low-tech manufacturing still taking place in developing countries, and there's a lot of high-tech development taking place in traditionally developed economies. So you're looking at Western Europe, for example. I'd like to put Europe forward because in aerospace research and pharmaceutical research, for example, we are sometimes the leaders in that area. Of course, you've got the Americans, you've got the Chinese. So each bloc in the world that includes the East Bloc now has its own set of selling propositions. And I think the key to a happy and growing economy in the future is to be part of that global economy and focus on the things we can add. And I'm saying we now as a quasi South African, we can bring to that supply chain and avoid, and particularly when you talk about circular economy and Industry 4.0, and that's pretty much the way things are going, broadly speaking. From a technology point of view, everything's becoming more and more integrated. We've got a lot more robotization in the manufacturing environment. So we need to make sure as a nation that we are part of that game, that we don't fall behind, and that we don't become net buyers of technology. We have to develop our technology locally. South Africa has to develop. The African continent has proven that it can. Look at Kenya; they've developed, online payment systems and those sorts of things, which integrate very neatly in the global supply chain and payment chain and IT chain. So we need to find our selling proposition and how it fits into the global supply chain. And I think that's very possible as long, again, as we have a friendly and all-inclusive and incentivizing investment environment to make that happen. You want a Silicon Valley here. You want manufacturing here. You want research and development to take place in South Africa as opposed to, the United States or Luxembourg or somewhere else. So global economy, IT, creating a friendly environment for both low-tech manufacturing on the one end, because we can manufacture and export, we're well located geographically, and high-tech R&D investment on the other end, because that's what's going to put us at the forefront of the 22nd century.
Oh, okay. Right. The other contribution also that's coming in via our Facebook is that how does immigration affect an economy? Are you convinced that Austria is doing well because of less immigration or less immigrants coming through?
I think, look, like in any economy in the world, you sometimes have enough of your own population to be self-serving, and sometimes you don't. And if you look at various countries of the continents, in fact, you can look at the USA, you can look at Europe, you can look at the Middle East, and how in fact, you can look at the Far East and how each one regulates the flow of immigration. I think it's each country's or each nation's sovereign prerogative to decide or not to open the tap for a certain type of immigrants in your country. Tourism is always welcome. High-tech skills are always welcome. The type of immigration that the question begs to answer is really the immigration which is the result of wars and political warfare in certain countries, which push refugees out of their own country and bring them into different landscapes. And that applies both in the US and in Europe. So there's not a single answer to that question. I'm not sure immigration is a solution to a healthy economy one way or the other, in plus or minus. I'm certain that it's part of our economic system. Each nation needs some degree of immigration, either for when you're short of labor, then you try to secure some labor from overseas. If you haven't got enough, if you're short on skills, then you're trying to secure and facilitate for foreign skilled workers to come into your country. And so it goes. It's a matter of regulating the flow more than saying it's good or bad. It's a matter of how much do you need and how much of skilled labor do you need to make an economy healthy, or to make immigration fit your requirements in terms of your own economy. Do you want, again, I'm repeating myself, but do you want low-tech manufacturing type people? Do you want high-skilled engineers and such? So immigration policies, and where it doesn't always work that way is when you have open borders. You look at Europe, for example, and the Schengen area, it's got a lot of sides, a lot of open borders through which unwanted immigration can come through the borders and just filter through the system and eventually land themselves in the different areas where they're not required and sometimes not wanted. And I think it's got nothing to do with xenophobia. I think it's got to do with pure economics. So if you control your borders and you let in and out the flow of immigration that you need for your nation, you'll be successful. And I think Austria has managed to do that fairly well. They're controlling the immigration both inwards and outwards. Some other countries in Europe have not managed to do that well in terms of controlling the immigration. And we certainly have an immigration problem, and illegal. And we're talking about illegal immigration more than legal and controlled immigration. So that's my answer. Controlling the flow in terms of your own requirements as a nation. Yeah.
And when you look at the role of, do you think that the role of business and its actors is sufficiently celebrated using the media as a bridge?
I think not, because I'm the executive director of the EU Chamber. So I'd like for us to be a lot more mediatized and use the media as a platform to talk well about ourselves.
Yeah.
And perhaps we haven't focused enough on branding ourselves as investors in South Africa. Some other countries have done it quite well, and as a result are perceived as being. I'm being tongue-in-cheek because, directly or indirectly, we still have China as a competitor, generally speaking, worldwide, and that applies. And it's neither good nor bad. It's just a fact. We're competing against their, 1.4 billion people in terms of manufacturing capacities. We're also competing against their substandard goods sometimes, which are imported both into Europe and into SA. So we're trying to find our feet and to fend off our market shares and to talk about the quality of our products a little bit better. Perhaps, and put that forward, and why European products come at traditionally a slightly higher price very often. If you look at luxury products or mid-range products, for what is perceived as a similar product to what's manufactured in the Far East, we are a bit more expensive. But that comes with a whole host of additional quality parameters, and the fact that we have higher salaries and we have higher social contributions that perhaps they have in the Far East. So we're trying to communicate that. And very often you see the markets worldwide flooded with products manufactured in the Far East, and you perceive, and then subsequently the Far East products are perceived, or the originators are perceived as being the largest investors and the most active, when in fact the guys who are committed to investment and to employment and to brick and mortar investments are probably coming more from our side, and we don't talk about that. So to answer your question, we should do a lot more marketing when it comes to talking about ourselves. But we do it. We prefer to do it. We have been preferring to do it quiet side for now.
Okay. I mean, you need to reach out to a whole lot of people, because many a times stories are not being told, and you end up getting the hearsay, shearsay on the streets. But when you actually come into public platforms where your voice is ahead, it becomes easier to share information.
True.
So
True. Absolutely.
So as a chamber, do you feel you are being heard correctly?
A chamber, Stanley, a chamber is that's one of the things perhaps we need to mention as well. The chamber is a member-driven, non-profit organization, which means what? Which means that a chamber as a structure lives off contributions by members, so membership, annual membership contributions, sometimes a bit of events, and sometimes some commercial services. But in a nutshell, a chamber of commerce is not a corporate, so it's not a war machine, and as a result of that, it's very light on. It's often very light in terms of executive structures. So we have a board of directors, and they each have competencies in their own sectors, and we have a light executive structure. So as much as we'd like to have a marketing and media plan in place and drive it forward, our priorities lie more on the lobbying and advocacy side. And I'm talking just about the European Chamber. I'm not talking about the bilaterals, and I'm not talking about the South African Chamber of Commerce, for example, who's got 20,000 members and is doing a wonderful job of lobbying and advocating, but they're also doing a great job in terms of mediatizing themselves because they've been around longer, because they have a bigger team. So they've managed to combine both priorities and do a great job on the marketing side and on the lobbying side. For us as the EU Chamber, which is fairly recent, we're working on developing our structure and our team, and hopefully in the near future we'll be able to have a better foothold on the media side. That said, we have managed to get excellent media coverage in the last 2 years, both below the line and above the line. We've been we've been quite visible at parliamentary level, for example, with the people that actually interact with us and people that matter. I'd say the work we do at government level is not necessarily also all the time something that's of interest to the public at large. When we engage on such intricate policy matters such as how the sugar tax or the proposed new sugar tax or the carbon tax for that matter is going to affect the way we looked at FDI is not something that's very attractive to the masses, I would say. So we've been very sort of underplayed or underhanded on the media side. We focused on topic specific and specialized press media exposure rather than the masses. So I welcome an opportunity like this one, for example, today, where we get to talk a little bit about what we actually do in the background and how we help business and how we engage with the government, with local stakeholders and other South African associations. In fact, I must bring that to the fore. I welcome that. So it gives sometimes now and again a better idea of what we do and how we interact. But certainly room for improvement on the media side going forward, certainly.
Okay. No, thank you. Ms. M, on the TV side?
Yeah, no,
say again, sorry, Stanley, you broke up.
Okay, no, I'm saying we've got Mr. M on the TV platform, so I just need to find out if he's got any further questions for you.
Okay, all right.
Mr. M?
Stefan, what identity would best suit you? Because I see you're a passionate African. Hello?
Yes, we had lost you for a second there. Right, I was saying on the TV side, do you have any more questions for Stefan?
Yeah, Stefan, I think we need him both on the European Chamber and African Chamber.
Okay. All right.
Agreed.
Agreed. So on the 11th of February,
yes,
we are celebrating Mandela's release from prison 28 years ago.
Right.
And I want to get 3 names of companies from you off air of who we can celebrate as best exemplifying what Mandela stood for from the European Union.
Sure.
So that
Sure.
we can recognize them on that day.
Absolutely. That would be with great pleasure, Matsuma. We'll chat about that off air. I'll give you the contact details of 3 companies I think you'd really appreciate. Some of the larger ones.
The larger ones, yeah, so that we demystify the role of the private sector, because there are people who believe the private sector are evil people. They are mean.
Yeah, I know. I'm aware of that.
Yeah, so we want to humanize corporations. That there is no Austrian or German company in South Africa. We have companies that operate here. And when you give up or demand shares, you are effectively demanding a portion of a child that is already born.
That's one way to put it. Absolutely.
When you can just give yourself, when you can just be a parent of a company, it doesn't require too much, and just get on with the job, than ask you to give up what they've worked for and what makes them who they are. And I was saying, I wish I could see a black BMW, and all I see is the color of a car.
Yeah.
And, imagine we had to make a black BMW and it becomes black. What kind of car would it be?
Absolutely.
So we're trying to promote as a station value centricity, not affinity centricity. That if you pick, you must pay. And if you pick and you don't pay, there's a problem.
Sure.
All right. So Stephanie will definitely be touching base with you. I think we still have a lot to talk about and share with the rest of our listeners. But for today, thank you so much for joining us. Any last words to our listeners and viewers?
My pleasure, Stanley. Yes, I hope to be able to chat to you again soon. Feel free to be in contact with me. We've got that's the whole point of our organization, is to establish open communication channels with our South African partners, be it in the public sector or the private sector. So anytime, Stanley.
All right. No, thank you so much, Stefan, for joining us this morning. Right, it's 6 minutes before the hour of 9 a.m. Continental Sunrise Breakfast Show on a Friday. Right, we'll return shortly.
Download our app on the Google Play Store and iOS. 1873 FM.
Hi, this is your favorite Bad Bad. Don't forget to catch the freshest breakfast show, aka Continental